Well, there's a handsome bit of cutlery, wouldn't you say? Tonight we're going to talk about differences, strengths, weaknesses between case knives and Great Eastern cutlery knives. Stick around, guys. We'll talk about it. Hi gang, Rob here. It's the evening of 7 April 2014, and yeah, I've been promising this video for a little bit, several weeks I guess, and I figured tonight would be a good night to do it because, I don't know, in the last week or so I've had sort of a knack for offending people on YouTube, so and I really don't try, I really don't, but so I thought I'd wade into this bit of controversy. I did want to talk about case knives and Great Eastern cutlery knives, and what are their strong points and what are their weaknesses versus each other. And I kind of chose 3 representative samples, I think, that that will help us illustrate what we need to talk about tonight. Up here at the top is the GEC Northfield Unexcelled Eureka Jack. That's pattern 92. It comes with a coping blade or a small sheep's foot blade and a beautiful spear blade. In the middle here we have a case, sort of regular sized Stockman. The Stockman is a Congress pattern, meaning there are no liners between the blades. They all sort of just have to fall together, and how they do that determines in a little bit of in large part the quality of the knife build. So that's kind of a high bar to get over if you're a traditional knife maker. And then here on the bottom we have the Northwoods Fremont Jack. This is a Derrick Bone design knife. Derrick of Knives Ship Free Northwoods Knives is now their sort of in-house brand, and their current offerings, Fremont Jack included, are manufactured by Great Eastern Cutlery. So I think this is a good example to show some aspects of GEC's manufacturing process and build quality. So, oh gosh, first of all, when we look at traditional knives, there are a couple things about the whole package that we generally like to look at. First is fit and finish, and then second would be walk and talk. You know, how does the action work? How does the blade snap? Is the backspring too heavy or too weak? So this is an area where GEC has some models that are really beloved and some models which are stayed away from by lots of traditional collectors, because if anything, GEC tends to they tend to go too stiff on their back springs. So I've got 2 models here that don't exhibit that, but what you do see is great walk and talk. Now this is the Eureka Jack, and it's sort of a smallish, more of a gentleman's traditional. Got to wipe the fingerprints off my spear blade. So it's got a very positive half stop and a great snap shut, but it's got a long pull, and whether you choose to do it by fingernail the whole way, or like I do on most of their knives, pull it out to the half stop and then pinch and open. The reason I've learned to do that on GEC knives is because some of their back springs are kind of fingernail rippers. But almost all of them, in fact all of them I've handled, you guys, you hardcore collectors might want to correct me here, but I think pretty much all their stuff has half stops, meaning the tang of the blade is square. So when you extract the blade from the handle. It's going to get to 90 degrees and stop at a hard stop, and then it lets you regrip and then fully extend. It aids in a knife with a really stiff spring in opening the knife, and then it also gives you some security when closing the knife. You can sort of thumb it closed to that half stop and really not have to worry about it closing on your index finger. And also, if you're in a cutting task and you feel the knife start to close on you, you know you can, as long as you're out of the way of the knife to that 90-degree position, your muscles will usually, by reflex, protect you past that. I like the half stop feature. Now, on all GECs that are multi-bladed, that have sort of smaller secondary blades, you can see that the back spring is smaller, so smaller in thickness on that secondary blade, which of course gives it a lighter action. So in this knife, the coping blade or the small sheep's foot is very easy to operate. If I go to the Northwoods knife, again a GEC produced blade, this is kind of an interesting knife for opening, because although it's got a long pull and you can certainly open it with your fingernail, it really lends itself to being pinch opened, because you've got this heat treat scale left on this flat, and your thumb and forefinger easily pinch the knife and open it all the way to open in that fashion. Again, not an overly stiff spring, but great walk and talk. Now, you'll remember my video on the number 78 American Jack. That is a model of GEC that, although it has, alligator mouth snap, it is a fingernail ripper on the main blade. So we're not doing a GEC love fest here. We're going to try to be objective, and that will probably gain me some hate. But you know, I gotta call them like I see them, guys. Now let's look at walk and talk on this case Stockman. You know, basically the same size knife as the Eureka Jack, with two back springs, and two back springs of about the same thickness as the Eureka Jack. But what you've got here is no half stop and a much more sort of gentle walk and talk. Not that the knife is stiff, and not that the spring is too weak, but it certainly doesn't snap open with the authority that the Eureka Jack does, and the Eureka Jack isn't one of the snappier GECs. There's the sheep's foot blade, and here's the pen. Oddly, the pen blade might have the best snap of all three. I don't know. But just not quite as robust in the walk and talk is the case. Now let's talk about fit and finish of the overall package of the outside of the knife. And this is where I will this is where I'll probably get the most criticism, but guys, I've handled a lot of case knives over the years, and you know, from $25 case knives to $150 case knives, and one thing they just do right is fit and finish, where the transitions happen between materials, especially covers to bolsters. I mean, you can close your eyes and run your fingers from jigged bone to nickel silver bolster wherever you want to on this knife, and if you're not looking at it, you can't feel it. I mean, it's hard even to hang a nail. I can if I try. Right at the corner, in one spot. Now, you know, guys, this is a this is a $45 or $50 stainless steel bladed 3-blade medium Stockman. And I'm going to pick up this Fremont Jack. Now, I know this isn't a GEC branded knife. It's not a GEC, it's not a TIDUTE, it's not a Northfield. This is a Northwoods knife built for Derek Bone at Knife Ship Free by GEC, but it's got, I love the knife by the way, but it's got bad transition problems. I mean, this one back here, it takes skin. I do love the knife, but this is not a strong suit of the Fremont Jack, and because it's a smooth bone knife, I kind of expect more from it, frankly. It's not jigged, it's not stag where there are going to be voids and gaps because of the nature of the natural material itself. This is smooth bone, camel bone, that should be able to be sanded so it's exactly flush with these bolsters, and it's just not. It's not anywhere. It is what it is. I will say this though, the transitions between liners and back springs on the GECs seem to be a little less lumpy than the case. I think the camera picks that up, where the brass liners seem to have been eroded away by the sanding process a little more than the back spring material. And on the Northwoods by GEC, no such problem. They do well on the metals, but this has stainless steel liners, so probably a pretty similar hardness between back spring and liner. You know, on the ends of the knife, it's just really good. Let's look at the Eureka. This is the best of the bunch. This is a Northfield line knife from GEC. Let's kind of see. There's a little grab there. Right here at this corner, pretty bad one. This is at the butt end of the knife. Again, same thing over here. Not as bad up here at the pivot end. And they can sort of get away with a little bit on these groove bolster knives because you're not looking for that super smooth transition. But again, on the metals, very good. It's mostly cover to bolster where I see the GECs falling down. And next I want to talk about blade grinds and blade polishes, and this is an area where GEC really shines. Now this is a spear blade, so it's not really going to make my case too well about grinds, but let's look at finishes for a minute. I will say this, and you'll pick this up if you look closely. The Northfield knives almost always have this near mirror polish, and generally as you come down here toward the plunge grind, you're going to see some tool marks from the grinding process. Don't know how well those are being picked up, but they are there. Maybe on the back side here. Look, just as you come into that plunge, you sort of start to lose that polish a little. You'll probably not see that on the case, and there's a reason for that. Let me pull the main blade here. Now, this knife's been used a little bit and sharpened. Both of them have. But if you notice, the polish might not be as bright on the case, but much more consistent. You do lose it a little bit in the plunge, but the case blades are kind of tumble polished. They've used all kinds of media for that process. Walnut shells were used extensively, I think, in the early 2000s. And because this process happens prior to putting the edge on, but after finished grinding, you end up with these round tips, which I hate. I just hate. I can't stand a clip point blade with a round tip. It just makes no sense to me. That needs to be a needle. I think even if we look at the sheep's foot blade, you know, you'd really like that to be pretty straight to the end. It's really not. And you know, I've sharpened this so you can see my edge kind of rises at the end of that sheep's foot, because I was trying to meet that round corner a little bit, because it was just round. Hate it. As I said, it's really hard to tell on the spear point because it's kind of round anyway, but even that spear point looks like a more crisp tip than that clip point case. Granted, I have sharpened that. But now let's look at the Northwoods blade. Now, this is a satin finished knife, but look at the point on that thing. If you're making a Wharncliffe or a sheep's foot, that's what a point should look like. And there's a way that that GEC achieves this that's pretty cool. I watched their shop tour video on their site, and on all their blade blanks there is a tab of metal sticking off the tip, like 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch, a rectangular piece of metal that stays on there all through the manufacturing process until they're ready to put the edge on and put the tip on the knife, which I think is so cool. It doesn't get beat up during the process. That tip isn't finished until the knife is sharpened. So they get really crisp tips, especially on their clips and their warnings. I really, really like that. Here's another big difference in the blades. Look closely. Don't know if the light's going to let you pick this up or not, but almost all case knives, the blades are all hollow ground. The GECs are all flat. And when Case does the hollow grind, even on these small blades, it goes all the way to the spine. There's no flat of any kind. That blade is hollow ground from the spine down. And unless you're a freehand sharpener, and a lot of you I know will say, you should never sharpen a traditional any way except freehand. Okay, whatever. It does present a little bit of a problem if you're going to use a clamping type system or a flat table type system like a Wicked Edge or an Edge Pro. I don't know how you do this on a Wicked Edge. You can do it on the Edge Pro if you use the flat of the tang, which does sort of carry out full thickness onto the spine, sort of. But it's a challenge, I'll tell you. So, and by the way, neither company puts on an acceptable edge. But that's a whole other video. And then, a lot of you guys ask me, and some of you have sent, a lot of you, in fact, have bought new knives and either had them sent to me as soon as you got them, or to sharpen, or have had them drop shipped here. And you know, I always get this question, why can't you get an edge like this from the factory? The short answer is nobody would pay for it. Or I shouldn't say nobody would pay for it, but most people will not. You know, if I charge $25 to sharpen a knife, clean it, and lube it, that's me with no overhead in my basement with a few $100s worth of equipment that's all paid for. Nobody's paying my health insurance or my 401k or my workman's comp premium or the unemployment insurance premium. It's just me. And it's $25 plus postage both ways. What do you think that would cost in a factory? You know, even if you're good and you have the right grits to really remove material in that early sharpening stage, a single bladed knife that's 3.5-inch blade, even if you do them all day and you're really good, it's over an hour. You know, so let's say that's a pretty skilled person that costs $15 or $18 an hour in a wage, plus benefits, plus equipment depreciation and capitalization. By the time it gets to a retailer, this edge that you see adds $50 to the price of a knife. By the time the factory pays for it, makes a little profit on it, and the retailer does as well, all that value-added stuff just got really expensive. You take a knife, for instance, take a cold steel Recon 1. The knife's $60. Anybody going to buy it if it's got a really pretty edge on it? It costs almost twice as much? No. Now, once we get into sort of the high-end production knives and the customs, I'll agree with you. There's no excuse for having a bad edge. But when we're talking about the sub-$200 knife market, a serviceable edge is plenty adequate and all we should ever expect from a manufacturer. There are a few crazy nut jobs in the knife community. I count myself among them, who want something different, who want something that looks like that and cuts like you see them cut, and that's a whole different ballgame. So I'm not going to hang either Case or GEC for the edges they put on it. I classify them both edge ready, and the blades are so thin on these traditionals it doesn't take much time at all to put a great edge on any of them, whether you're using the True Sharp stainless from Case or their CV, which is kind of like 1095 Crovan, or the 1095 heat treated by Peters from Great Eastern Cutlery, and that's what both of these blades are. They're capable of taking and holding a phenomenal edge. I would give the edge on the edge to GEC in their 1095. It's definitely a better edge taking and holding steel than True Sharp. Case's CV steel is very close, however. Very close. That's about it for this one. This video kind of got away from me. I didn't expect it to be 19 minutes long, but you got to remember too, guys, $100 knife, $100 knife, $50 knife. $100 knife, $100 knife, $50 knife. So you'd expect some of the differences, I think, in the ways that GEC knives, I think, are better than Case. It's a little disturbing that they can't quite get this cover to bolster transition right more than they do, because Case always gets it right. So send a spy over there to Bradford, Great Eastern Cutlery, and figure out how they do that, because that's an area that you could improve in. Well, that's all for tonight, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the word is sharp.